We're going to combine the talents of Shakespeare, Rumi, and David Hawkins in this lecture this evening. All right, you like that? Is that good company? So we're going to read a little poetry from Rumi and Shakespeare, and I just posted the video of our own David Hawkins and his wonderful song, Anyone's Eyes. And so watch that first before watch this video. It'll be the one, I'll link to it in this video. But we're going to now talk about why that's a very powerful spiritual song and why I'm connecting it to Rumi and Shakespeare. Okay, so let's start with the concept. You know, David's song is Anyone's Eyes, and it made me think when I was hearing him sing the concept of your eyes are the window to your soul. You've heard that before, right? Now, a lot of people know that that's Shakespeare, but they don't know that was only part of what he said. Shakespeare said a whole lot more after that, right? And it's gonna be some of the stuff we talk about in David's song. What Shakespeare, the full quote is this: the eyes are the window to the soul. Or was it just an illusion? His version of what was, is, or could be. A conception of a thought brought into reality by the wandering of an ever restless mind. Now you can see why your eyes are the windows to the soul is, you know, a lot more poetic and people remember that, right? But there's a second part to that. Eyes aren't just a window to the soul, they're also windows to an illusion, okay? They're a window to an illusion of a version of someone else's version of what is. So it is a window to the soul, which you'll see as we go through it, and if we do it the right way, we all have the same story, okay? Because the soul, as I have in this drawing up here, comes from the same source. I've left Lake Samadhi up here, and we all come from that source. We all come into being, and we take on different form. And the question is always, while we're in the world of duality, are we different or are we the same? That's the never-ending question. Are we different or are we the same? It's so easy to see the differences, right? I don't need to ramble on about that. Are we able to see the sameness, the unity of things? Well, in this drawing, it's pretty easy to see. We come from the same source. So a little piece of God was placed inside of all of us, okay? The supreme consciousness runs all of us. The Tao fuels all of us. Everyone has that. Is that what we see? Or do we see the differences in everyone? And so when Shakespeare talks about the eyes are the window to the soul, and we're going to go deeper into that as we go along, but for sure it's true, because if you look at someone the right way, you can see the soul aspect of them, and they can see it in you. But at the same time, you could see the illusion aspect as well. And that's sometimes very evident in people's eyes and our own. Because what's coded into the illusion? Well, the idea that we're separate, first of all, and all the various experiences that we have. Because if we're looking at the window to the soul, what we're going to see is universal truth. We're going to see commonalities, truths that apply to everyone. I have a capital T here for that one. Those types of truths include physical laws like gravity. That's a universal truth that works on everyone. And a bunch of various other physical laws too, including superposition, the way neurochemistry works, the fact that all of us have, our issues come from chemical imbalances inside of ourselves and that we have the ability to correct those things. These are universal truths. All of us are operating under the same physical laws, but we also operate under the same set of spiritual laws. The laws that Jesus came to fulfill, by the way. And there's a bunch of laws that can easily be thought of as virtues that are universal. For example, forgiveness always works. Courage works. Hope works. Wisdom works. Doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what political party you're in. It doesn't matter. Those things are differences. But the things that we have in common, the idea of forgiveness always beats resentment, always everyone feels better, and certain chemicals get produced when you actually work on forgiveness, just as an example. But spirituality goes way deeper because all of us have these same sort of great questions. Is there life after death? Is there a God? If so, what is that God? Is there a meaning inherent in our life? Is there a purpose for us being here? Whether you know it or not, there's answers to those questions. Some people might say there isn't, some people might say there is, whatever, but there is an answer. We'll find that out one day when we die, won't we? Okay? And so that's stuff we just all have in common. And we can look at each other and see that in each other, and see that we all came from the same source, so we got separated, and we turned out to be different beings, physically speaking, because of the illusion that we're in, the idea of separation. What happens in the illusion? It's relative truth. I have a small t truth here. We still have truths, but they're based upon where you were born and how you were raised and your culture and all of that. Like your customs, for example, the clothes that you wear. right? The foods that we eat, the prophets that we follow, those are all relative. Those aren't universal truths. They happen because we do get separated into physical form, and some people are planted over there and some over here. And with that comes a whole bunch of different individualized stuff. Remember, the word ego literally means I in Greek, okay? And we all have this ego perception of the world, and we can see that in each other. The individualized self includes our conditioned experiences. Why am I speaking English? I got trained to. That's it. I didn't choose it when I was 3 months old. I think English this lifetime. It just got taught to me. And then a bunch of other stuff gets taught to me. I'm the youngest of 4. You know, my name is Steve. This is how we act, and this is how we dress, and this is who we like, and this is who we don't like. Stuff like that. This is everybody. We develop preferences from this, including food preferences and clothing preferences, but we develop a perspective as well. This is the world that I'm living in. This is what it means, because this is what mommy and daddy told me, and their mommy and daddy told them, and my first grade teacher and my neighbor, and all that stuff. These are experiences that I might have had that you didn't have. This is not universal. It's relative. That relativity leads to something called opinions. One of my favorite teachings I learned a long time ago. If you would like to access truth, give up your opinions. Why do we have our opinions after all? Because of your conditioning. What did you get taught, when you got taught it, where you got taught it, by whom? That's going to be different than my experience. Yet universal stuff is still always there, no matter where I'm getting taught, what language I'm getting taught. I've still got gravity working on me. And that question still hangs over my head. Is there a God? Is there a purpose and meaning in life? Is there life after death? That's always there. And no matter what language you're talking about, forgiveness is still going to work. Okay? So we always have this duality going on. There's a spiritual way to look at things. There's an illusory way of looking at things. And this is available in anyone's eyes. Because guess what? If you look at it this way or you look at it that way, you're going to have an experience to mirror that. As David sings about that in the song as well. There will be some sort of reflection back at you. So that's Shakespeare setting up the song. Now I'm going to mention one of Rumi's poems. Rumi said, "What was told the cypress tree to make it strong and straight, and whatever made sugar cane sweet, and whatever put eloquence in language, that's happening here. What was said to the rose to make it bloom was said to me in my heart." So we have Rumi saying, well, trees, something makes them grow strong and straight. Sugar cane, something makes it sweet. Language has eloquence in it. That's happening, right? Is language doing those things? Is the sugar cane making itself sweet? Or does this happen? Does flow go through it? Does the Tao somehow emanate through it? Sure. What makes the rose bloom? Some sort of force, of course. Some sort of plan, if you will. Some sort of energy. And Rumi says, that which made the rose bloom is set in our hearts, right? Now, the poetry of what Shakespeare said combined with Rumi, well, guess what? It's evident, because that's said to all of us over here. Everyone has that, and you're going to see this throughout David's song. Everyone has this instinct, this feeling, this desire to connect to the all. Everyone does. We're born with it. It's what Morpheus says in The Matrix is a splinter in our minds driving us mad, okay? But it's a calling upon our hearts. Each of us has it. We're all born with it. Are you developing it? Because it's going to bloom too. Guarantee that's going to happen. And so you can trust that everyone has that type of thing going on, like Rumi said. You could trust that, or we could judge people for where they're at in the process. For many different reasons. Not everyone's read this Rumi poem, for example, okay? Not everyone knows or considers anything about Shakespeare, right? People have not heard it. So how are they going to understand this stuff if they've not heard it before? They've not heard David's song until now. Hopefully everyone's heard it. And so we're going to talk about these things and see how they all link together, specifically using the lyrics for David's song, okay? So, keeping in mind, the question is what is it that you're seeing in someone else? What is it that you're aspiring to see? Or what is it that you got conditioned to see? So David says, "Today I met my enemy. He was crying bitter tears, lost in his dark philosophy, sinking in his fears. He saw my face, and as if in shame, he turned to walk away. Then, for reasons I can't explain, I asked my enemy to stay." Combining that with the second stanza, "He waited long, then turned back to me, maybe looking for a sign, his face twisted in agony, his eyes reflecting mine. What have I done to my love, he cried. What's happened to my heart? Nothing to give, I'm empty inside. How do I even start? Well, beautiful lyrics. And let me use Rumi and Shakespeare to take it up a few notches. Well, guess what happens inside each one of us? If we don't listen to that call that Rumi talks about, that which is speaking to the rose is speaking to hearts as well, guess what happens to our love? It gets extinguished. This is a universal experience. Everyone goes through it. What's Buddha's first noble truth? We all suffer, right? Why do we suffer? Life is unsatisfying. We cannot be satisfied by just the physical experience. It's not going to happen. The only experience that satisfies us is when we connect to the unity of things. That's also universal. It's placed inside each one of us. It's the calling. When he says, for reasons I can't explain, well, I don't know if that helps at all, but you were wired to do that. Everyone was wired to do this. We are here to have a divine experience. We are here to learn how to first get hidden, hide and seek, if you will, and then seek and find. We're supposed to fall out of love and then fall back in love. That's the game that we're in. Set up that way by divine plan, okay? And so that's the calling. You just experienced it. Now, everyone's in that journey. Everyone will get it. If this song speaks to you, guess what? You're probably somewhere along in that journey as well, okay? But not everyone is aware of it. So they're not woken up to it yet. They might have got that feeling yet. So it is the first noble truth, and what happens, we do get lost in the illusion. It's Thoreau that said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. So a whole lot of people are faking. Social media is wonderful for that, right? Look how good my life is. But deep down, there's a hurt inside, quiet desperation. Enemies abound because everyone's struggling with this one way or another, because there's the idea of separation. We're somehow different. And if you know what to look for, you can see it in everyone's eyes, okay? Continues. The weight of my unconsciousness pulled me deep within. Quiet light filled my own emptiness and said, let us begin. I said everything, yes, everything is a call to love. I spoke as if I knew such things in a world we could rise above. We do know such things. We were all given a little piece of God, okay? We all have Christ-conscious capability. Jesus said, greater works than these you can do, referring to himself. Buddha said, we're all Buddha too, okay? The problem is the ego says, nah, that's not true, I don't believe it. The ego is the vehicle of separation after all. It's the reason we're having a physical experience. And the ego says, nah, you can't be like Christ or Buddha or anything like that. Forget what those prophets, never mind that they all say the same thing, that you will do this. The ego says, no, that's not going to happen. So we resist that. And yet, everything is a call to love. One of my favorite teachings ever I found in Kabbalah says this, 100% of everything that ever happens to any of us ever is for the same purpose, to unite us with love. But not human love, obviously. That's small t truth. You know, I love the Pittsburgh Steelers and chocolate chip cookies, okay? Not everyone does. That's not universal. Everything that's happened to us is happening to us to unite us with universal love called agape. And that's love of everything. You got to love your cookies and your football team, but you also have to love your neighbor and your enemies and your adversity and death itself, because it's an illusion anyways. You have to love it all. 100% of every experience we ever have is indeed a call to love. The Tao itself calls us vessels of perfection. We're not physically perfect, but we are spiritually perfect. We will reconnect with this. That's the journey that we're all on. None of us is satisfied. Remember, Dukkha, we're not satisfied with an A- either. All the teachers, all the prophets teach perfection. And so it is a calling inside of ourselves, and yes, everything is indeed a call to love. Trace back through the walls of sorrow, past the edges of despair, stand before the shining mirror, and face the child who welcomes you there. Precious child who welcomes you there. Well, immediately I thought of Matthew 18:3. Jesus says we have to approach heaven as a child. Because when are we in human form the closest to the truth? Right when we're born, okay? Way back before we dive into all the separation. Way back before we get conditioned. We're born little lights, so to speak, okay? And we haven't started to take on the ego mind To approach heaven as a child is to approach it ego-free, right? Or unconditioned, connected back to source, right? When we're 3, which 3-year-old is worried about racial tension or whether or not they have nice hair or likes on Facebook and stuff like that, right? That's not what they're interested in. And we have to approach heaven as a child. We actually have to get to a place where we see that precious child inside of us. Well, do we look at each other that way? The mirror, which is about my favorite therapeutic spiritual concept there is, I can see reflected in you something about me. As Course in Miracles says, the only way I can help you is if I only see the light in you. Well, it's so easy to see the darkness and the separation, isn't it? So if we mindfully look at each other and do what the Buddha says and think Buddha or Christ or Spirit or whatever, and we know this is true, guess what we're going to see? We're going to see that light in the other person. Guess what that light does? It draws out the light from that person. Okay? Just like sunlight warms little things, little seeds, and helps them grow, when we do that with each other, we help each other grow. And this tracing back part I like so much because I've quoted Madame de Stael so many times over the years. Okay, Madame de Stael, the French philosopher, if you understood all, you'd forgive all. When you look into somebody's eyes and you consider their past and their history, at some point you'd understand why they are the way they are, right? And why things turned out the way they did. And that the pain and suffering that they all go and we all go through is going to be part of the journey of why we're going to decide to return back home. Why we return to love, okay? Compelled by something I could not understand, and not knowing what he'd do, I held out my open hand, wondering if he'd offer his hand too. It's always yes or no, we decide, but only love can mend, reaching over the great divide between enemy and friend. I could actually have quoted the Bible throughout most of this song, okay? But that one in particular, I don't know if you know you did this, but that's Matthew 5:37. One of my favorite all-time short little verses. Jesus says, all you do is say yes or no. Any more comes from evil. That's pretty intense. David says, it's always yes or no, and we decide, yeah, because any more comes from evil. What is it that we're deciding? Well, you're quoting Jesus. It's good company, Shakespeare, Rumi, and Jesus, so there you go. So what are you deciding? Are you choosing love or not? There isn't anything else to decide. Now, of course, you got to decide what pizza toppings you want and, turn left or right here, stuff like that. That's ego mind, earth guide only. But in every moment of your life, are you looking at someone else using your higher mind, the very Lord that Jesus says is one, that's inside of all of us? Are you using your higher mind to see the other person as love and love alone? That's it. There's no other option. Any more, Jesus says, comes from evil. Wow. Which means you better be choosing love every time. Do we do that? Are we good at that? Do we look at ourselves in the mirror and do that? Not very well. Certainly not in today's American political climate are we good at that. And again, if you don't want to be spiritual, don't have to do that if you don't want, okay? Eventually you'll get to it. But to be spiritual is to look at every single other person without fail and see just the love. As Rumi also says, we're separated from God by 7,000 veils of light. Were we to love in every moment, we remove a veil. What if we could stay committed to this type of love? It's always just yes or no. And yes, that's your point of free will. With free will, I can't just start speaking French or go back and change my conditioning, but can I choose to see love in every moment? That I can do. That's free will. Can I choose to perceive virtues when I see other people, or can I choose to see their conditioned history and why they are the way they are? Again, that's our choice. Each of us have that. So the chorus, which I say for last, look deep into someone's eyes and the stories they share. You may find the road that leads you home. So take it if you dare. It's waiting for you there in anyone's eyes, okay? What I love about that is that it's so universal. This is not one specific person, certainly not one prophet's eyes. It's every single human being on earth, without fail, without exception, because everyone has it. And we are not specifically talking about physical eyes, of course. I think that goes without saying. Not everyone has eyeballs. What are we talking about? Ram Dass said we are just walking each other home. Okay? That's because each of us, while we have different stories, has the same story. We came from Source as this divine spiritual being. We come into form and we take on the ego. And we take on a human ego that sees separation, and it sees division, and then it argues for right or wrong, okay? Everyone's playing that same game. And every one of us has to learn how to get past that thing. That's what a crucifixion truly is. Can you get past the ego inside of yourself? Can you experience the light inside of yourself? Everyone is getting led back home by each other's journey. If we only cared enough to listen to another person's journey, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, or whatever religion they follow, or language they speak, or whatever, what we're actually doing is walking each other home and looking at each other by loving each other as oneself. Jesus' most important commandment, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love another as oneself. That's anyone else. So what are we talking about when we say anyone's eyes? Of course, it is physical to the extent that that's useful and valuable, but it's everyone's eye. We're talking about the third eye, of course. Can you see that in someone else? Can you see the spiritual awakening? You're not going to see it visually, but you're going to feel it. Kabbalah teaches something called the screen. It's a sensor in which you can feel the energy of another being, okay? And if you're tuned into that type of radar, when you're looking at someone else's physical eyes, you'll feel that spiritual eye. You can also tell whether or not you're judging them because of the way you're going to feel quickly. It's beautiful the way the whole thing is set up. As we look at each other with any type of judgment, guess what? That comes right back on us. You'll feel it. Do you like to feel judgment about someone else? No, that's because you're judging yourself. That's what we're all doing, right? And it's why you reap what you sow, and karma and all that is true. What we have to learn how to do is we have here Master Oogway, who in Kung Fu Panda describes how we have to settle the water down, and he touches the water on this little bowl that was there, and he could see that the divine plan that unfolds underneath, because the calm mind is able, it helps us see the plan. The Hindus have a teaching of how the moon is just one thing, but upon a rippled lake, it appears to be many things. Well, what if you can calm the water? Then you could see everything reflected as one. This is what we need to be able to do. Calm our minds down, seek spirit, look at each other. You could do this in anyone's eyes, and what we end up seeing is everyone's third eye. That's what we're looking for in each other, okay? All right, thank you, David. Shakespeare and Rumi and Jesus as well. All right. Okay.